Live from London, this is BBC News. With less than 24 hours to go until the coronation, King Charles makes a surprise visit to fans camping out on the Mall with the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Are you feeling okay?
I feel wonderful.
This is Kate talking to my ear. Do. Well, come and say hi to you, Lee, when you're back over here, but I hope you get better soon.
And at Westminster Abbey, the final preparations are underway for tomorrow's coronation. The King and Queen Consort have had their last rehearsal. The Wagner mercenary group posts a social media video of its leader berating Russia for not sending the force enough ammunition. Serbia's president pledges an almost complete disarming of the country after the second mass shooting there in 48 hours. Welcome to the programme. I'm Yalda Hakim. Now, the Conservatives have suffered significant losses on a bruising night in the local elections in England, with the Labour Party making gains in key battleground areas. Rishi Sunak says the results are disappointing, but insists he'll carry on with his agenda, while Sir Keir Starmer claims his party is on course to win the next general election. If all of Britain had voted today following a similar pattern, the BBC predicts the share of votes to each party would look something like this, with Labour on 35%, the Conservatives on 26%, the Lib Dems 20% and others 19%. Well, let's chat more about this with Sir John Curtis, who's a professor of politics, and our UK correspondent, Rob Watson. Thank you both for joining us here on the programme. I mean, Rob, it's been a day of coronation preparations and, of course, local elections.
Yeah, we don't have coronations in politics. You really have to work to get to the job, in the sense that it's a real struggle. But yeah, I mean, to sort of strip it all away, what have we learned from this? I think it's been pretty devastating for the governing Conservative Party, the results of these local elections. And I guess it's left this sort of question out there, you know, has it been a protest vote, admittedly of kind of gigantic proportions, or is there something more profound going on, a sort of sense in this country that after 13 years of government by the Conservatives, you know, the other lot couldn't do any worse. Maybe it's time to give them a go.
Yeah, 13 years and quite an intense sort of 18 months.
Yes, and of course the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and a leader of the Conservative Party, he's sort of hoping that what you're seeing here is a protest against his predecessors, against the sort of chaos and pantomime of the Liz Truss months and the Boris Johnson years. But essentially there's nothing fundamentally wrong, nothing broken with the Conservative brand. But it may be, of course, that analysis is wrong, and that it really is about the longer record, about 13 years, and that sort of sense in the country that the polling tends to suggest that you've got an awful lot of people who just think, you know, this is a country headed in the wrong direction.
Let's bring in Sir John. Sir John, results are likely to be declared in the next sort of half an hour, 45 minutes or so. But if you were to look at key messages that have emerged from the ballot box, what would they be?
Oh, three key. The first key message is that, as Rob was suggesting, this is a very bad set of results for the Conservatives, and basically the message of the opinion polls over recent weeks and months that the Conservatives are in deep electoral trouble is amply confirmed by these results. Indeed, it still looks possible that when all the results are finally in, that the Conservatives will actually lose 1,000 council seats. Now, they spent a long time in the dying days of the campaign, so well, maybe that's what would happen. But undoubtedly expecting that is not what would happen, and they would therefore be able to claim some kind of minor victory. Well, they're at risk that they're going to discover that their forecast is going to prove right. The second thing we have discovered is that indeed the Labour Party is certainly now in a stronger position than it has been at any previous point in 2010, again confirming the message of the opinion polls. That said, however, the fly in the ointment for Labour, and therefore thirdly, is that 35% projected share of the vote is no better than what Labour achieved last year. In other words, the fact that the Labour Party is now further ahead of the Conservatives than any point in previous local elections since 2010 is much more to do with the fact that the Conservatives have fallen back so badly than it is with manifest evidence that the Labour Party itself is a more popular institution than it was 12 months ago, despite all those events to which Rob briefly alluded.
Yeah, and so John, I suppose this takes me to the next question, which is, all eyes are on the general election. So what could this potentially mean?
Well, I mean, it confirms that the Labour Party's chances of winning the election, as the opinion polls have been indicating, are certainly better than they have been at any point in the last 13 years. That said, that 9-point lead isn't on a par with what David Cameron, the then Conservative leader, achieved in the run-up to the 2010 general election, after which he became Prime Minister, or indeed what Sir Tony Blair, the then Labour leader, opposition leader, was achieving in the late 1990s before he won the general election for Labour in 1997. So you can certainly argue that these local election results don't suggest that the position of the Labour Party is as strong or as firm as those last two occasions in which we did end up with a change of government as a consequence of the election. But of course, there's no inevitable deterministic rule in politics. There's no guarantee as a result of these results that the Conservatives will be defeated. But equally, there is no guarantee that the Labour Party won't increase its lead and end up with something approaching a landslide. It's 18 months probably to the next election. There's an awful lot to happen, and certainly a great deal would depend on whether or not there are signs of recovery in the UK economy. The UK is is in the midst of suffering the biggest cut in living standards since records began in the 1950s. That makes it very difficult for any incumbent government. But maybe things will be better in 18 months' time, and maybe voters as a result will feel rather more benign towards the Conservatives than they certainly seem to do at the moment.
Rob, I'm going to bring you in because, you were nodding throughout that whole analysis there.
Yeah, no, I would endorse everything that Professor Curtis said, particularly about that sort of caution of, we could be as far as 18 months away from a general election, and who, hand on heart, Yalda, could say what's going to happen in 18 months, given what's happened, over the last 6 years. So you do have that caveat. I think I go back to that point that I think John has also been going over, which is you can see that the voters, that the electorate are angry in this country. But one wonders, are we heading towards one of those change moments where people are just so fed up they are prepared to give the other side a go? And the other question is it enough for Labour just not to be the Conservatives, or do they need to go further? Do they need somehow to explain in the next 18 months, look, we've said that the Conservatives haven't left you better off these last 13 years. Here's why things would be better and different under us. So I think both the main parties have huge challenges. I think both of them will feel, look, that the outcome of the next general election is definitely not decided, and that there's all to play for. So expect plenty of action on the UK politics front.
Yeah, and as you say, 18 months is a long time. Rob, Professor Curtis, thank you both for joining us.